TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google, Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now joining us is Gary Groob and our very special guest of the coach of the Victoria Shamrocks, Mike Simpson. Isn't that a great sports name, Simpson? I mean, there's been a few very, very famous and wonderful athletes and coaches, by the way, that were named Simpson. So where do you fit on that list, Mike?
Somewhere probably near the bottom, I would say.
I don't think so.
Mike, I seriously and sincerely thank you for taking the time to be here. First of all, we always like to ask, you know, what brought you to the game of lacrosse? What attracted you? How'd you get involved in it?
You know, it was, I think really, to be honest with you, when I was a young kid, my neighbor was a few years older. We were like best pals, and he played. And then a good friend in school, like in grade 1, his uncle was George Grover, who was a goalie for the Victoria Shamrocks way back in the 70s. So I just sort of got introduced to it like that, and sort of joined a local team and never really looked back, to be honest.
How does one feel about the game in regards to what motivates you specifically? You know, what attracted you the most about the game? The physical play, the scoring, the defense?
I think back then it was just, you know, when you start off and you're young, like the funny thing is my dad never played. So he was he played ball. So when he was teaching me how to, you know, catch with the stick, he had his baseball glove, and I'd throw it to him, and that's how he'd catch it, and he'd throw it back. So I was pretty fortunate there, because he certainly did whatever he could. But, you know, you just play it and you kind of like it. And, you know, I think when you're young, it's just about being amongst a bunch of kids and running around and having some fun. And, you know, and I guess it just sort of resonated with me, the game, all of it. So I just kept playing, never stopped.
Then you decided that you could impart your experience and knowledge about the game. When and why do you think that happened?
Yeah, it's a good question, to be honest with you. I think, you know, for me, sort of learning the game was super important, because as a player, because I wasn't super athletic, and like some of the guys that you see play, like, I mean, like I grew up playing with Paul and Gary Gate, who were not only the best players on the floor, but they were the best athletes on the floor too. And, you know, I was lucky that I understood the game, and that was sort of my way of keeping up. Like, and so the game to me, like the sort of, you know, the ins and outs of it came fairly easily. And so I just thought when it was finished that, you know, I might have an opportunity to help some of the younger guys sort of learn as well.
And just the last introductory question, emotionally, how did you, and how do you feel about lacrosse emotionally? I mean, we know that physically it does what it does for you. You know, it's a great, but there's for most lacrosse people, there's an emotional attachment as well. Is there one for you, and how does that manifest itself?
Yeah, you know, it's a funny thing, because when I played all the way along until I ended up getting the job in Minnesota, and then I coached the first year in Minnesota, and then I stopped. And I was one of those sort of guys that, you know, I couldn't really do it part-time. Like, it just didn't really work for me. It was either all or nothing. And so I didn't even go to the rink for probably 12 or 13 years. And then, you know, when I came back in 2017 with the Shamrocks, I realized how much I missed it, to be honest with you, and how important it was. And so, yeah, I guess I'm one of those sort of lacrosse junkies who does just love it and feel super comfortable in the rink, and kind of makes you happy. And it's just almost a home away from home, to be honest.
Yeah, it is, you know, I think by definition, it lends itself. There's some changes coming down the road, but it lends itself to playing all year round, because the opportunities to play all year round are many. And there are decent tournaments, championships, leagues going on all year, that there are challenges all year round, which, is unique, I think, to lacrosse.
Yeah, it's, especially, I mean, I think there's probably going to be box opportunities all year round, but even before then, I know lots of, even growing up, lots of kids they go right from box directly into field. And it is sort of a 12-month a year process for them. And sometimes I worry, to be honest with you, as somebody who loves a game, that for somebody who's 13 or 14, that might be too much lacrosse. Like, I do think you need a gap. I do think, like, I always played a different sport in the off season. And then, I was a soccer guy in the wintertime. And I just think you kind of do need to put your stick down a little bit. Just otherwise, I do worry about burnout for some of these kids. But to be honest with you, they seem to take it in stride and just love it. So good for them.
Well, Gary, he seems to think that a change is as good as a rest. And I kind of agree with him.
I do too. And, you're not the first one on the show to tell us that you need to have a secondary or even a third sport so that you don't burn out in lacrosse. There is sometimes a little bit too much, I think. And I think the way the system is set up now, where you're doing 12 months lacrosse might be a bit much for a youngster.
Yeah, I just think that, and plus I think too, the other thing is a lot of the other sports do lend themselves to lacrosse, whether it's basketball or hockey or whatever it is that you're doing, and you can still get some good training. And again, when I talk about understanding the game, understanding pick and rolls in basketball is going to really help you with pick and rolls in lacrosse. So there is some advantage to the cross training other than just, giving yourself a break from lacrosse in general.
Sure.
But you can certainly still learn about the game and it can still make you a better player.
And stick handling and taking a cross check, giving a cross check, hockey's not bad for that.
No, right? And the funny thing is those are skills. Like, being able to get checked is an absolute skill. And I know sometimes, with the younger kids, I don't know if they get a chance to practice it enough, like in a controlled environment, but learning how to get hit is every bit as important as learning how to hit properly, I think.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I got to tell you, the hitting part, usually when the more games matter, the more you need to get hit, is what I've noticed from players. It's like a switch, right? All of a sudden you get hit. You go, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm playing lacrosse.
That's right. And we always say it. In fact, we had our first game on Friday night, and for some of these guys, 3 years since their last game. Wow. Certainly we have some NLL guys in our lineup, but we had some guys that weren't. And you just sort of go, and when I talked to them before, I said, fellas, you're going to be nervous and you're going to be anxious. Go out there and hit somebody. Go out and get hit. And then that sort of seems to always settle the nerves a little bit. It's like, okay, here we go. I don't have time to be nervous because otherwise, who knows what's going to happen. So get involved physically, and then the rest usually follows.
Okay, let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about your playing career. You came up through the Shamrocks organization, right?
I played. I did. I played. Back. They weren't the junior Shamrocks back then. We were the Esquimalt Legion. But yeah, the same idea, and intermediate. And we had intermediate in the West. I don't think they had that in the East. But so there was a 2-year sort of age frame in there where we played, and Saanich before that. So yeah, just locally born and bred and worked my way all the way through.
Right. Well, let's talk a bit about the program, because you're talking about a program that's rich in heritage. So when you were coming up, the coaching and all that, they spent a lot of time fundamentally.
Yeah, we were pretty lucky to, I was certainly, I had, when I joined, and, I had really knowledgeable coaches and lacrosse people who, from lacrosse families. Which, to be honest, you look at it now, it isn't always the case, and so I was really lucky, and I had former Shamrocks coach me in my Pee Wee year. I had Bill Marichek and Dan Green were my coaches, and, because Tom was on the team. So Tom and I grew up together and played all the way through. And so I was really lucky. And then, in junior A, I had Kevin Alexander and Bob Cool as a coach, and then Nermal Dillon. So, and then my first year in senior, Walt Christensen was a coach. So I did okay. I was pretty lucky.
So yeah. And you were coming, like you said, you played with the Gates, you played with you're talking about in a time where things were transforming, and the game was evolving into something
Mhm.
that was really, really big. So you're right on the edge of that. So it must have been really an exciting time.
Well, it was, you know, lacrosse was and still is in Victoria is a big deal, right? And like we were saying before, there's the Peterboroughs and Victoria and maybe Orangeville and New Westminster. There's little pockets of Canada where lacrosse is, you know, kind of foremost in the cities. And so in Victoria was one of them, obviously. And I was lucky. I had great teammates, and it was right, you know, it was right when plastic sticks started coming in, and, you know, and half the guys would use plastic sticks, half the guys would use wooden sticks. And, you know, I can tell you that there's a vast difference between the two. So
We've heard.
yeah. So you know, it was but it was right at that time. Field lacrosse was just starting to take off, and yeah, it was. And guys were just starting to get scholarships and go down to the States, Paul and Gary at Syracuse and that sort of thing. And so yeah, it was a great time.
Now you were the 87 Rookie of the Year, so I think you sold yourself a little short. Where I'm not the one with all the athletic prowess. I think you're a little modest on us. You were
Another problem with lacrosse players, Gary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You don't really have to worry about the Eagles being, you know, too big.
Not that much.
Yeah, everybody's really kind of modest. But you know, you won one of the Minto Cups in '88. That particular team, what was so special about that team?
Well, you know, we were loaded, for lack of a better term. You know, Paul and Gary, Tom Marichek, Greg and Grant Pepper, Grant Hamilton, Darren Rysick, like sort of a who's who of Western lacrosse. Bob Hayes in goal. We were really good, and you know, had sort of this rivalry with the Peterborough at the time, who were also great. And so, you know, we sort of got to the final every year and couldn't close the deal a couple of times. And so, you know, it was at home, which was great, and Memorial Arena was sold out for every game. And, you know, we just sort of put it all together, and we felt long overdue. And I'm sure if you talk to the Peterborough guys, they'll have some reasons as to why it went that way. But I think, you know, finally we got a chance and we closed it out. So it was good.
Right. So you were named captain the following year in '89.
Yeah.
You know, with that kind of a team named captain, yeah, okay, you're just kind of the middle of the road guy. No, I don't think so. Again, the modesty comes in.
Yeah, you know, I guess I was fortunate enough to understand the different roles that needed to be filled and that sort of thing. And yeah, it was a big honor to do that. And you know, I was excited to take that for sure, and you know, go on and get into the senior, and was able to attain that there too. So I was fortunate.
Right. Drill down a little bit about that, because obviously at face value for many of us, you know, it's about leadership, being the captain I'm referring to. It's about leadership. It's about a knowledge of the game and a sense of community within the locker room. And of course, a connection to, we mustn't forget, with the coach, right? You have to have a good relationship with the coach as well, right? Because you're his intermediary, right? So go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
You know, Nermal Dillon was our coach, and he had been the coach the year before. So Nermal and I did have a really strong relationship. And, you know, I think just being able to sort of navigate a room is super important for a captain. I mean, you don't have to be the best player on the floor. In fact, to be honest with you, they rarely are, I think. But you do need to be able to manage a room and communicate with guys and feel comfortable to take somebody aside and just say, you know, this isn't going to work for us. And this isn't, you know, you don't need to go to the extra step to go to a coach, but you need to have the teammates that if they, you know, if I do pull you aside, or somebody does pull you aside, that it resonates with them. And, you know, I think I was able to do that. So, you know, it did work out pretty well.
Yeah, it's important that you're able to do that, because there's a level of pride within a locker room that, you know, if you do it, there's different ways to accomplish the same goal, right? You can either stand in the middle of the room and the coach can berate you for about half an hour, or your captain can come to you and say, you know, on the sly, which is, I think, one of the biggest characteristics that captains have to have, and that is, you know, an ability to give a message without making the player feel you know, like he's being coached, more teammated. I don't know if that makes any sense.
That makes total sense. And you know, and the level of responsibility you have with that will be dependent on your coach and how he likes to manage things. And, you know, Nerm was super level-headed, and, you know, very rarely did he get angry, which doesn't mean he didn't, but it was few and far between. And, you know, and he was comfortable, and he also gave me the latitude to go out and do some things. And I think he had a trust in me, which was important. And, you know, so if I thought I saw something that was a problem, he just let me go and handle it. And not that there wasn't many, you know, but a few from time to time. And it just, like I said, it just seemed to work. So, you know, and I mean, not to say that had anything to do with us winning. We were a totally loaded team. And
there we go again. No, it had a lot to do with it. It had a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
No, and not just you, any captain. I mean,
yeah,
you know, it's about there's a language that's spoken from a coach to a player, and there's a different language from a player to a player. And sometimes there's information that is shared among the players that the coach is unaware of, like you said. And the way you express, you know, you don't have to mention stuff. You can just, you know, skirt an issue and still get the message across, which is harder for a coach to do.
100%. So, and sometimes I think, you know, depending on the player, there's a different level of trust between a player and a coach, and a player and a captain, like a teammate. It's different, you know, and so when it's done properly, it can be super effective if it comes from the captain.
Yeah, and it could be the same message, you know, given differently from the coach and the
Yeah.
player. And then that, you know, that's the other thing that's important. Why I'm kind of joking with you about, you know, not being that important, because the two conversations create a better team. You know, there's teams, and then there's teams, and the ones that win are the ones that are able to communicate in a more direct and uncomplicated manner. And I think that's where the captain comes in. He helps uncomplicate, you know, the issues at hand.
Yeah, you're right. And I think that, you know, a captain he can be more, I don't want to say forceful, but he can be more direct if he needs to be, because it is just a couple of guys essentially.
Yeah.
You know, and it takes a little heat off the coach too, I think. So, you know, I think when you get the right captain, it becomes super important for the well-being of your team.
Well, when you're grinding and the other guy's grinding, it's easier to have a conversation, because if they don't know that you understand what they're going through, then they're not paying attention, right?
That's
so
true.
Yeah, that's part of the benefit too. You sweat together, you work together, you listen, you learn together.
100%.
So you graduate up to the senior Shamrocks, the senior A team.
Yeah.
And in a few years' time, you're the captain there as well. And it's obviously the same more or less group of people. So that leadership quality is still, that respect is still there. So it's probably, you know, a pretty easy transition to be the leader of that team as well.
Well, it took, you know, I mean, when I first went up, Art Webster was the captain, right? So, you know, and Arthur was an unbelievable leader. And so you know, you just sort of come in as a rookie, and, you know, you sort of just find your way, right? You should be quiet and get down to work. And, you know, and then when he retired, and I'm not sure what year it was, I was fortunate enough to take over. But, you know, but to be honest with you, in between there, I think Rick Brown was named captain, and then I was named an assistant captain in there. And then Rick had to go because he got on the fire department. So it all moved relatively quickly.
Right.
But but you are right. Essentially, back then, it was almost the same group of guys go from one level to the next level, and, you know, minus 3 or 4. So it just seemed like a natural fit, I think.
And you were great, because you guys won the Mann Cup in '97. Now, in a place like Victoria, it'd be like in Peterborough winning the Mann Cup. That place must have gone absolutely nuts, because in Victoria, lacrosse is life, right?
Yeah, it was a fun time, and you know, the interesting thing about it is when I first moved up to senior, and we were the Victoria Payless, I think those were some lean years. Like, we had some teams that were not great, and so, you know, we would go and Memorial Arena, I think, you know, it was 5,000 seats, and we'd be, and like we were talking about earlier, we'd be in there some nights with 300 people, and most of those were just friends and family. So, you know, as we continued to get better and you know, promoted it a little bit better and had some success, the crowds got in, and then on those games, you know, they were sold out like days in advance, and people were lining up for walk-up tickets at 1 o'clock for a 8 o'clock game. And it was super fun, and the whole town was on board. So it was great.
Right. So you finish off with them, and then how did you get into coaching the juniors? Who taught you? What was the transition into that?
You know, I'd taken some time off, and then I was running lacrosse camps. Actually, I did a few clinics locally, and then Dave Ward, who I knew through the Shamrocks, you know, and his son Ryan, who was a star at the time for the junior Shamrocks, and you know, they were looking for an assistant coach, and he asked me, and so I decided to do it, and then I did it for a year, and then ended up getting the head coaching job the year after. And you know, that was, I think it maybe 3 or 4 years there I did that, and then which sort of ran right into Minnesota. You know, and again, lucky for me, you know, Marty O'Neill was in charge of Minnesota at the time, and of course Marty and I had played senior for years together, and so he offered me the job, and that's how I ended up there. So that's how it started. Just somebody asking, really.
Because that must have been a crazy time too. You know, you're putting an expansion team into the NLL and trying to get it off the ground, and the growing pains again with the Minnesota Swarm. It
was tough. You know, it was tough at home. I had 3 young children, and I just started at the fire hall. So it, you know, like I'd been at the fire hall for maybe 8 months or 9 months. So it was, you know, it was flying in and flying out and changing shifts and doing all that stuff. And, you know, it was hard. But I loved our team, and, you know, we started off really strong. And then what happened was we went a period of about 8 or 9 games that we lost in a row, where we only practiced maybe 3 times in that time frame. And then we started to practice again, and then we started winning again. So, you know, we lost some close ones. We got the doors beat off us a few times, as an expansion team is prone to do, but it was a great experience.
It's not like it is now, because here we have the Rock Athletics Center now, and a lot of the practices, because a lot of the guys are from out here, they'll hold over there. You had a bigger challenge is to get to Minnesota to have a practice would be, I don't think everybody's going to fly out for a Tuesday night practice.
No, so typically what you do is you would fly in on Thursday. We train Thursday night, and then if we played Friday or if we played Saturday, we'd roll in on Friday. But you know, you started going to different things. You go and there'd be events at the rink. So I remember when we went to Philadelphia, there was a Bon Jovi concert at the arena, so we couldn't practice. So, you know, and one other night in Minnesota, there was some sort of a home show or something at the arena, and we couldn't practice. So those things, I mean, you know, just sort of before, maybe they may have a practice arena now in Minnesota. I bet or not even in Minnesota anymore, but most of the places now probably have their own sort of practice facility. But back then we didn't have one. So it was a bit of an obstacle.
Yeah, because around here in Ontario, let's say a lot of them go to the Rock facility on different nights of the week. And also you have the Iroquois Lacrosse Arena.
And I remember our first game was in Rochester on New Year's Day, I think. And we spent 3 days prior at the Iroquois and trained there for 3 days. It was great.
Yeah, that's quite the arena. You're talking about history and everything. I love walking the halls there just for all the players that have come through that program. You know, almost more than watching the game.
Yeah, that's fun.
The history on the wall. Okay, so your junior Shamrocks career, your coaching record, 63-29, you're really successful. Yeah, go ahead with that. Sorry.
Yeah, you know, we had a really strong group of local Victoria kids, actually, to be honest. You know, Ryder Bateman and Kelly Hall, and you know, all guys that ended up, Chris McKay and Ryan Ward, and you know, we had Blaine Manning for a year. So, you know, and Matt King in goal, who was a star. And so we were really good. And, you know, and we ran in, what our problem was we ran into the Burnaby Lakers team, which was also really good. And so, you know, we had some really great, I think we lost in 7 one year to them. And then the next year we lost it. We got beat pretty quickly this next year after that, but then we lost again, and in the best of 5, we lost in the fifth game to them at home, which was unfortunate. So yeah, because they were a great team too, but I was lucky because I had tons of talent on that team.
Right.
I guess it was tough playing the Lakers, no matter where they came from.
Yeah, right. Try to dodge those guys whenever I can, to be honest with you.
So you kind of, I don't know if the word graduate comes here. You graduate up to the Shamrock senior team again, and you're now the offensive coordinator. It's 2016-ish, 2017.
Yeah, 2017, and it's funny because when I left, players were still playing both ways. I mean, you certainly shortened your bench towards the last 5 or 6 minutes, or not sort of specialized it in the last 5 or 6 minutes of every period, sort of thing. And then when I came back, it was totally specific. You were a front door guy or you were a back door guy, and we were changing all the time and doing that. And I said to Bob, I said, geez, the game I've come back to is certainly not the game I left. So it took me a good year, to be honest with you, to get sort of up to speed with the different offenses that the teams were running and just how we did it. So I was kind of a deer in headlights for that first year. And I leaned on Bob and Art a lot, and they sort of helped pull me through. And, I had but again, Corey Small, and, I had a really great group of guys, Chris Wardle, that could help me out. So Dutchy, and, I leaned on them a lot too.
Now, we've had a lot of the veteran the Hall of Famers, guys like Dave Durrani and stuff like that on here, and they've been proponents of that maybe we shouldn't pigeonhole, especially the younger kids, into the offense, defense, and the two-way game that used to be. Maybe that should be more of a prevalent thing now. What do you think? What's your opinion on that?
I think that, I mean, at the end of the day, you want to see Jesse King and Reese Dutch at the front part of the floor, and you want to see, big defenders at the back end of the floor. I get all of that, but I think Dave isn't wrong in that, especially now with transition being such a big part of it. A lot of these guys are doing it again anyhow. They're running the floor, and then they have to stay up because there's not enough time to get them off and get somebody else on. So, and then on the flip side is, I look at Jesse King, who I'm super fortunate to coach, who I think is the most complete box lacrosse player in the world. He can he's a top 5 front door guy, and he could easily be a top 5 back door guy if he wanted to be. And, but those guys get caught on defense. They need to have at least some idea of what to do. Otherwise it becomes a big problem. And so I kind of think we're heading back in that direction, nowhere near the same way it was, where you would run off, the whole group of 5 would go out. But I do think that teams are starting to want their front door guys to play some back end stuff, and the same with their back end guys, because the guys are so athletic now. They all end up going up the floor. The days of having the big thumper back there, they're not over, but they're fewer and far between, right, guys? It's all fast now because they've taken all the face-offs out of the game, and they've, so if there's a turnover, you've got to get it and you have to go. You only have 8 seconds to get it over the floor, or get it over center, sorry. So whoever gets it has to really be the guy to transition the ball. So it doesn't matter who it is. And once you're up there, if you're up there for 5 or 6 seconds, there's no point in coming off. So you have to at least have an understanding of what we're doing.
From the perspective of Gary's question, also I think what was the conversation was about the fact that we need to keep the game interesting for the younger players, right? And the idea of pigeonholing younger children, not giving them a chance to see what the other part of the game is. I'm one of those people that, absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? If you feel like you're being pigeonholed as a defender, and the coach identified that you're really good at it, and then you try being an offensive player, you might find out you like to be a defender. So it's not just about trying different things. It's about appreciating what you're doing by going to the other side for a little bit. That transition, not the same transition we're talking about lacrosse, but changing positions, offers players and an opportunity to appreciate the game from different angles and understand it better.
And I think too, there's huge value in almost reverse teaching. So if you're a defender Go play offense for a while and figure out what you're going to try and do to get yourself to the goal. And then as a defender, you'll have a better understanding of what it takes to get open and maybe what the guys are trying to accomplish. You know, and I do think that I don't mind shrinking the benches in with the younger kids, but I do think that there should be a time period where they can do it in a game. Like if it's the last 7 minutes of a period or 5 minutes of a period. You know, I remember one of the times when I was coaching junior, one of the kids, I had a call up come up, and it was one of the guy's younger brothers, and he was a big, strong kid. And I said, okay, when you get in the offensive end, you know, just go set some big screens, like good, strong screens. And he looked at me and he said, I haven't played in the front door in 4 years. He was only 16.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm thinking, geez, that's not good. Like that's not where we need to be at all. So I would be in favor of not, you know, before peewee or even bantam, that you can't even shrink the bench like that. And then as they get to 13 and 14 or whatever the age group is, if they wanted to start specializing, then I think that would be okay. If it's limited, that would not be a terrible thing.
Well, especially because, you know, players aren't, you know, being a good offensive player may not be, by definition, the same as it was 20, 30 years ago. Just like being a defensive player 20, 30 years ago is different than it is today. So in essence, I guess what you're saying, and I agree with 100%, is you got to keep switching things up so that you keep up with the changes and what's going on and how the game's being played, and turning it around and looking at it from a different angle. And from a coach's perspective, that's important. From a league's perspective, I think it's really important. And it's great that you have that thought. And we know from the people we've had on here, it's a feeling that lacrosse people have, is that, you know, the nuances of the differences are great to explore and experience.
100%. And like I say, I think they make you better at what you were doing in the first place if you learn. Like I'll sometimes get my power play guys to play short man, just so they understand the rotations and understand how they get manipulated is how they're trying to manipulate the other team. So there's huge value in that, I think.
Right. Yeah, well, you're getting in somebody's head, right? Like you have your, you know, well, your understanding, and when you switch and try to be in somebody else's position, it helps you. It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Plus, if you have a really good transition game, number one, it's exciting for the fans. Who doesn't want to see a long pass from your goalie to one of your guys already in progress? But the other one is you're keeping your opponents on edge on the bench. They know that they have to get out quickly. Otherwise, you're going to really be giving up a lot of opportunities. So a lot of the time, penalties are coming because they're jumping too fast.
Yeah. And, you know, the transition part of the game is the great equalizer, right? So, you know, there are teams that may have a, you know, more experienced front end than someone's back end or vice versa. But, you know, all these guys can run. So that's always pretty even. So if you can transition the ball well and score 2-on-1 goals or breakaway goals, you know, like what I call those are free goals if we give them up, because they don't really have to work for it. All they're doing is just running, you know, and if you can get 3 or 4 free ones in a game, it changes the entire dynamic of a game. So
yeah, that's the Les Bartley theory out here. If you get 3 or 4 transition goals, we're doing great for the night.
You bet, right? So all of a sudden you get 3 or 4 transition goals, you get a couple of, you know, special teams goals. And now if your offense only gets 4 or 5 goals, you're still at 10. You know, if 10 is your magic number, and for most teams, I suspect it probably is. And so, it, you know, there's lots of ways to get there, and transition is a big part of that. So, yeah.
Well, it's about fitness too, right? You know, they're all the players are fit. All the players are athletes and they're athletic. So when you do the transition is like you called it, the equalizer, but it also gives an advantage if your transition game is effective and you know, efficient, if I can use that term.
Yeah, you make teams honest if you run the floor, right? They have to get off and they have to get on, and you know, and even if one time they go half speed to get off and you're going full speed the entire time, that's advantage to whichever team's running. So it is super important, especially now, like you say, because everybody just gets it and goes. There's no stoppages, are few and far between. It's game on from the opening faceoff now. but
it's exciting to watch. That's what the fans really like.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
the
way
edge of
better.
the thing,
Yeah.
right?
You know, I mean, we were even talking about it, or I was watching the game the other day, and they were saying there was a time when every time the ball went out of play, it was a face-off. There'd be 50 face-offs a game, you know, and now there's, you know, 20 or however many goals there are. That's how many face-offs there are, you know, minus the 3 at the beginning of each period. So there's no time to just sit around anymore, which makes it super exciting.
Right, and also the players, they have to be in shape because there is no time to get a breath. You're going constantly.
Well, it's funny, guys. You know, when I used to go to training camp, I used to wear a garbage bag under my gear. That was my time to get fit. Now, that doesn't happen anymore. These kids come in and they're ready to go. So, yeah, it's good. They all can run. Even the slow guys are fast, right? So, it's good.
What impact has that had? Because you know that's you know, athletes today. You know, we talked about lacrosse players playing all year round, but even, you know, other athletes, and you know, there's a lot that goes on in preparation for games. Is it that much different, or is it just my imagination that there's more of an investment by players in the game, even off, you know, off field training, if you will, or out of rink training, that kind of thing?
Oh, I think it's totally different now. You know, I think back, you know, when we played, or when I played, it was, you know, you took it seriously probably a couple of weeks before training camp, and that was, I mean, I did. I shouldn't say all these guys did. That was sort of my deal. So, but you know, some of the guys now are training. It's just part of their everyday routine, you know, and you know, and especially the higher end guys, you know, they have trainers, and they're you know, they have diets, and they have all of that stuff, and I mean, it definitely works. And you can see, like, I think the level of player now is probably just generally significantly fitter and stronger.
Yeah, and it also, unfortunately, and that's something they're working with. A lot of athletes, they become overtrained, and that's the thing that you have to be careful of as well.
You know, what I think is that sometimes when you really start training, and you see gains and all that stuff, there is a little level of addiction to that, right? It's like, okay, I just benched 225. Well, I'm going to bench 250 next week, or whatever it is, or whether it's a time in a run, or whatever it is. And so you do have to be careful of that, because I do think there's different levels of training depending on where you're at in your season. Like there's preseason training, and then I think the training in season should probably be just more management than actual training, right? Like, so recovery and stretching and you know, and nutrition, all that stuff, super important. But I would hope that the guys are dialing back a little of the weight training and trying to get the, you know, the big, huge gains in that regard, because that is where injuries and strains can happen away from the floor.
Yeah, so there's, you know, it's like you said about, you know, there has to be a safe way to do stuff, and understand that you don't have to play all year round, and you don't have to work out all year round. You know, you need to find a comfort zone, and that's the, you know, like you said, the comfort zone's not as pretty as, you know, making improvements. So, but sometimes the comfort zone's what keep you playing all year, so or all season, whatever.
Yeah, and I think as the guys get older, they definitely understand that more, you know, and I know that they go pretty hard at school when the kids are in university, and they're in the university teams, that if they're not on the field, they're probably in the gym, and they do go really hard, but you know, at least they have somebody there to monitor that, and it's well looked after.
Right.
But overall, the guys are significantly fitter and stronger now. There's no question.
They're prepared.
Now, as though you weren't busy enough already, you were named the Scotland's national box coach back in 2021. What's involved in doing that?
Well, you know, it's been a great experience. Basically, what happened is in all honesty, I didn't know much about European lacrosse, box lacrosse at all. And then in 2019, the World Championships were just in Langley. So one day I just thought, I wonder who even participates in that, right? And I looked around, and my wife and I had always wanted to go to Scotland, and you know, her grandfather is from there. And so we had looked into it. We were going to honeymoon there and do all this sort of stuff. So I made some phone calls and sent some emails and sort of got connected with the coach at the time, who was Brian Whitmer. And he was great. Like he basically, you know, he entertained my emails and we chatted, and then he moved along and then gave me the information of the general manager that was there. And so I started reaching out to him, and it just sort of evolved, you know, and then it turns out he was a Victoria kid. So he sort of knew a little bit about younger guy, but sort of knew a little bit about my background. And, you know, I just applied and I was fortunate enough to get it. And, you know, my first call was to Bob Hayes, who's my assistant there, which is fantastic. So Hazer and I are back together again. And you know, I've been over 3 times now, and it's been great. The guys are fantastic and they just want to learn. And, you know, we play in it's a roller hockey rink that's about 2/3 the size of a real arena. And we have to go sideways when we play 5-on-5, but yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, a shamrock and a celt.
Yeah, that's right.
A couple of bases covered.
Well, the color stays the same anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Green is the color.
So finally, we get back to lacrosse after a couple of years of COVID, and off floor things are the same because you still had drafts. You still training camp this year must have been crazy because you would have had a couple of years worth of draft picks coming in, plus the players you had before, and trying to sort through all this stuff and not a lot of time to get the season going. How difficult was that as coach?
Well, to be honest with you, I think I sort of I probably didn't handle it as well as I should have, because you're right in that we had 3 years of draft picks,
right?
2 of them having never even seen any of them play before because there was no season to really even watch them.
Right, sure.
So, you know, we started running around in the middle of April, and, you know, with 15 or 20 guys. So, you know, I probably should have thinned it out a little sooner, but all our NLL guys were still playing. So I enjoyed having the numbers. It made sense to have the numbers. And then as they slowly came back, just, you know, it took a while for me to sort of to navigate down to a manageable number. But, you know, there were some really pleasant surprises, which was great. You know, we got hit pretty good, our team, with the injury bug with the kids at school, which was unfortunate. So, you know, we had really 4 young back end guys that I was really looking forward to playing. And, you know, Max Wilson did his ACL in September, and Brian Robb did his ACL, you know, in February, and Ryan McLean, who played last year and plays in the NLL and you know, was in and out of the lineup, I think in Fort Worth, he did his ACL. So it's like, wow, that's 3, you know, guys that I had, to be honest with you, when I in January or say before the start of the season, I would have penciled those guys in to start, no question. Right. So, you know, and then one of our draft picks from before COVID was Nick Scott, who was, you know, a kid we took in the compensatory round. So one of the first 7 guys taken. And, you know, he in a couple of years, his job situation changed and he couldn't make it over. So we had to move him. And so that was 4 guys, you know. So now I've got 4 young guys, senior B guys that have really put their time in and worked super hard. And, you know, Arthur's done a great job with them, and you know, they're regulars in our lineup. So it's been good.
Now do you still have guys in the NLL right now to come over?
We still have like Brad McCauley and Chris Wardle for sure. And then, you know, we'll see what happens from there.
Right. Now, you had a good start to the year, and you were talking about Jesse King. Well, 4 goals, 4 assists. Pretty good start to the year with your it's a 14-10 win in that first game.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, you know, it was a good game. You know, New West, I think didn't have all of their players. I mean, as sort of happens, right? Probably in both leagues, I'd say your first 6 or 7 games are certainly not the lineup that you're going to have for your last 6 or 7 games. But, you know, their offense was still really good. Mitch Jones and Jordan McBride, and, you know, good. So the young Dixon kid, Hayden Dixon, I think. So they were offensively, they were really solid. And then they have Zach Higgins in goal. So, you know, we got to Zach a little early, and then he found his game, I would say, about maybe with about 10 minutes to go and halfway through the game. And it was a Zach Higgins that we would expect to see. Right. And he's kind of shut the door on us. We had a little wobble, I think, in the third period, but we managed. And, you know, for us, I think just to start that way was great. Full house, the place was packed and it was rocking. So it was a great night for us for sure.
Right, because Higgins had a great night the next night too, because he shut him down altogether. But
yeah, he's really good.
Yeah, but yeah, you had 2,500 people in there, but you also had a TV thing for the first time.
Yeah,
that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it was fun. You know, we I don't think Czech Six is at like sort of the local station here, and I don't think they've ever carried a game before. I mean, from time to time, we used to be on a Shaw sort of channel, but so that was great. And I think I'm not sure how well it was received, but it was broadcast, I think, in the whole province, which was great. So it was a nice way, after 2.5 years off or whatever it was, to showcase the game, to showcase the full arena, which was awesome. And then the right team won. So it was a good night for everybody. Yeah.
It's also the pride that the players have and the parents have and the family has that they're on, didn't you see my kid on television? That kind of stuff. That's awesome. That kind of stuff. It's a nice little perk.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, our guys know how fortunate we are to play here anyhow. And then when you throw something like that on top, it's I think they all really enjoyed it. And one of our young guys who we had drafted, who I didn't dress afterwards, said he was just amazed at the entire thing, and so I think it was great for the guys, it was great for our team, and great for the league. So hopefully we can do another one. That'd be awesome.
And the game next Friday night when you play Coquitlam, I think that would be a great one, because I'm expecting you guys to be 2-0 going into that game, and they're 3-0 right now. So I think that would be a pretty awesome game to view television wise. It would be must see TV, I think.
Yeah, we actually have 2 games this weekend. So we go Friday night at home and then Sunday in Maple Ridge. So if in a perfect world, we'll be 3-0, and and will it even be better? But with Pat coaching that team, he can tell that already that he's had a big influence there. So, and anytime, with Christian in goal, that'll get your attention anytime. So it's, I'm looking forward to it. It should be a great night.
Yeah, that'd be an awesome game. Now I want to address the elephant in the room. The Premier Lacrosse League is doing a great job, and they've marketed wonderfully. But this new contract that they came up with, saying that if you're playing for us, you're in the bubble and you're not playing anywhere else. How is this going to affect the league moving forward?
It's not really for me to say. And to be honest with you, from a Victoria perspective, we haven't really been affected by it. But in the grand scheme of the thing, for the game of lacrosse, I think it's a little bit short-sighted. I don't know that there's any need to do such a thing. What's unfortunate is that a lot of their superstars that play in that league are Canadian box guys. Not all of them. Of course, there's tons of American stars too, but like the Dane Smiths of the world and the Graham Hossicks of the world, like those guys are born and bred and playing box lacrosse first. And so I just don't know that it's fair for them to be taken away from that game when they could do both. And I understand they're trying to protect the quality of their league, but in doing so, I think they're really hurting the summer game. And I just think it's a bit short-sighted, to be honest with you. I think there's room in lacrosse for both. And I wish that they would maybe have, thought it through a little bit more.
Yeah, there's yin and yang, right? I mean, if players, they put people in a position where they have to commit to not playing, it doesn't really matter, because then it's as easy for you to go, okay, well, he can't play here. Let's take a more serious look at somebody else. And the difference between athletes, I'm one of these firm believers of the actual difference between the majority of players is not that much. Mostly what it is opportunity. And this basically just says, someone's going to get an opportunity who otherwise wouldn't.
There's that end of it for sure. I just think, in a game that's, I don't want to say starving for fans, but trying to really build a fan base and have, it's easier to do that when you're dressing Jesse Kings and Reese Dutches and not Mike Simpsons and Gary Groobs, right? So if you're dressing us, because we can still play a little bit, but we don't play at that level. And so, and then, when they see those guys play and that, the Joey Caputo's, for argument's sake, with that turnaround, flip around, backhand goal, well, that was never coming out of Mike Simpson's stick. I can tell you that right now. So if, as a fan, if you can see that, you're going to want to go back and watch that. Now, do you want to watch me make a good outlet pass? Probably not. Like, I mean, you'll see it once and go, geez, that was pretty good, but it's not going to bring you back the next week. So I just think that the caliber of player we're talking about are the elite players, not the good ones. And I think there is a bit of a difference between those two. There's lots of really solid box across players for sure. But, there's few elite ones. And we're going to miss out on those guys.
Right. So the other thing that I want to bring up is with the OLA here and MSL shutting down, it looks like we have another year without a Man Cup. That's the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, it's we hope, of course, that it gets sorted out. I don't really know the particulars about it. And I knew to a certain degree that there was some discord back there with the whole Brampton thing. I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to it. I was just surprised that it became like a shutdown almost, really, it sounds like. So I truly hope they can sort it out, because I think for us, at the end of the day, as much as competing in the West is fun and we want to do it, it really comes down to the Man Cup. And that's what all of us are here for. So we certainly want things to get sorted out.
Right.
Yeah, it's been played for a long time, so any absence is felt.
You bet. Like it's a Canadian institution, right? So and granted, maybe only for a certain parts of the world of Canada, but the ones who pay attention miss it, and it's super important. It's why we play.
Even those who don't pay attention, it is one of the most. It's not the Stanley Cup. But in a way it is, like, it's a championship that everybody knows. Some people know of the championship and not even the game that it is. That's the name itself, the Man Cup, is something that everybody's heard and may not even know a lot about it. I know when I was growing up, it was a trophy that I knew about, and they play lacrosse. That's a lacrosse championship. I assumed it was something else like hockey, right?
Right.
So that's how I was introduced to lacrosse back in the 60s. So, it's an important event, and it's one that needs to survive. And it is a mark that you need to every year hit. I just hope they work things out sooner rather than later.
Yeah, me too.
Well, we only got about a minute left. I just want to take time to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule just to do this for us. And I wish you the best of luck with the Shamrocks this season.
Guys, thank you. I had a great time. I enjoyed it. I love talking lacrosse, as you can probably tell. So I really appreciate being on and have me back anytime.
Mike, it was a real pleasure having you on. Gary, thanks as usual.
Thank you.
I really appreciate this, guys. Anytime we can talk lacrosse, it's great. Pick up a stick, give it a try. If you're watching, if you have never played before, it'll get a little tempting once you try it. The challenge, I mean, we talked about it on the program, that you get kind of greedy with progress. In lacrosse, you can pick up some really interesting things. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Frank.
For Gary Groob and Mike Simpson, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching NLL Lacrosse Talk, seen live Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For lacrosse talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Pick up that stick, darn it.